Hello, Columbus, and welcome to Burning Issues, the new CSU TV show dealing with the important political questions of the day. And I say new, but this is actually our fourth show, so we're kind of excited that I guess I'm going to keep calling it new until I figure out what it is I'm supposed to be doing. So in the meantime, we're going to have a lively discussion today. I've got two students here with me that are going to help us examine this really important question. The question is liberty versus security. But before we get into our discussion here, we're going to turn to our friend Taylor Atkins, who's going to tell us what's trending on the web on this issue.
Hey guys, it's Taylor here with your social media report. This week we are discussing liberty and security. Does the government have too much control about what goes on in our personal lives, or do they play on our fears and tell us that they're protecting us? Nick Easton and his colleagues are going to discuss that today. Stay tuned.
The format for our show is that I introduce an issue and discuss it with two political science students, or two students from CSU, usually political science students, but they don't have to be, which is actually a point that I wanted to make, but I'll get to that in a minute. Let me introduce the two students. Our two students today come from an organization called SPA, which is the Students for Political Awareness Association. And on my left here is Jennifer Spickler. Say hello, Jennifer.
Hi, how are you today, Dr. Easton?
Good, thank you. And on my right, Kendra Wilson.
Hello.
As I said, the students come from an organization called SPA, Students for Political Awareness Association. A not exactly new organization, but new this year in that it had lied dormant for a year or two. And under the leadership of our friend Quan Boyd, it's gotten going again, is really active, and is where we've been getting the students from that are going to discuss our issues. So if there are students that are interested in discussing these issues, you can certainly speak to SPA and get involved in that, or you can speak to me directly and we'll figure out how we can work you into one of these discussions. The whole format here is not to listen to me, but to listen to the points of view of CSU students. So as I say, today's issue is liberty versus security. This is a pretty straightforward issue. The question is, are we willing to swap certain levels of security certain levels of our liberty in order to be more secure? This obviously became a question after 9/11, when we began to realize that we were going to have to take some pretty strong measures to protect our country against terrorism and terrorist threats. And so various laws were passed and various practices proceeded that some people say took away our liberties. So we're going to start out by looking at some of the basic questions surrounding this and see if we can get some discussion going with our students and expand on it more. There's a lot of questions in here, so I'm going to try to take them one at a time. I start out by looking at something that I found on the web, which was a debate just on the very basic issues here. And the question is, would you rather give up some level of security in order to, I'm sorry, I keep saying it backwards. Would you rather give up some level of your liberties or freedoms in order to be more secure? The first answer I got came from somebody who said they didn't think so. In other words, what they said is, if you're in prison, you're safer, but you have a lot less freedom. So I guess the question is that true? Is it like being in a prison if you begin to lose some of your liberties? And I'm going to let Jennifer take a shot at that.
I have a very difficult time with that, actually. Being in prison, yes, you are a little bit more safe and secure from the outside world, but you are still not personally safe and secure from your other inmates or your guards or anything like that. You can get shivved or die or anything in jail as well. So yes, your liberties have been limited, but that's only for the outside world.
Now, how many years did you do again?
I have not done any years in prison.
I didn't know how long a stretch you went through, but I mean, you describe it like a real insider. You really seem to know your way around, Jennifer.
No, sir. I have a clean record. Clean record.
Kendra, what do you think? You agree with Jennifer, or do you want to see if we can start a fight over something here?
I agree with Jennifer, definitely. Being in prison, you are definitely, you may have that security, but in a sense, you're not really truly secure from your inmates, and prison crime is definitely high as well, and it's very prevalent. So you're not really necessarily protected in a prison, and so I mean, I totally agree with Jennifer and where she stands.
Yeah, I wonder if those terrorist suspects sitting down at Guantanamo feel that they're very safe. I'm having a feeling that that's not their number one thought, is how wonderfully safe they feel at this.
I would agree with that. I would completely agree with that. I mean, Guantanamo, yes, it's our place where we have a whole bunch of our terrorists from from America, or rather, that are terrorizing America. But there's still, there's Muslims and Shiites there, in Guantanamo Bay, and they're not necessarily separated, more than likely. So it's very interesting to see, like I said previously, it's very, while in prison, while in that institution, you are not safe from each other. You are safe from the outside world. You are safe from the people of Cuba, the people from the United States, your home country. You're safe from those people because they can't get to you. That is what you are protected from. You are not protected on an individual basis from other people, unless you're in isolation.
So basically, what we're concluding here is that prison's not very safe. Is that
They're not safe. Come on, prison gangs. Come on. I mean, the movies. I mean, they get some things right. I know sometimes they kind of, tank these a little bit.
Oh, do you watch those silly shows with the prison things? Oh my God!
Hey, they give me a little insight. I haven't done any times. So.
That may be another show to talk about the content of the TV networks these days. These what do they call them? Is that reality networks? What do they call
reality TV shows?
TV shows.
The youth detention center.
Okay, let's pick up on another aspect of this. Many people have said, and this is another thing that came up in this little blurb that I found on the web, that the idea that the dangers are exaggerated to encourage submission. In other words, and it's been said on many occasions, and it was an issue, a point raised right after 9/11, or shortly after 9/11, when we began to realize that many of our liberties would be somewhat limited. For example, we would have to go through very intensive searches to get on board an airplane and various other things. And people began to feel the pinch. And some people said, well, that the danger really wasn't that great. It was just exaggerated in order to encourage submission. In other words, the best way to get the citizens to behave the way they're supposed to is scare them. Is there truth to that? Who wants to start? Kendra, you want to go first on that one?
I can start. I believe that I believe that there is some exaggeration when it comes to terrorism, any type of threat, or people feeling danger, like the security is threatened. I believe it is exaggerated in order to cause your country or your citizens to submit. Because, if there is nothing really to put people in fear, how would they kind of, I don't want to make it's enslavement if you're in bondage, but there's some certain level of exaggeration that have to come into play in order to get your society to conform the way you want it to conform. It's very sad that it can be that way, but I'm pretty sure that mechanism is used. And
well, no, I wasn't quite sure if you were saying that it's regrettable but necessary.
Yeah, I would have to take that type of stance, because I know. But I believe that it is used to be able to suppress, not to suppress, but to cause society to have to submit and be like, hey, let me take a step back here. Let me be more attentive and more adept to listening to what my government or my higher official authority has to say.
Okay. Jennifer, I think, has a slight disagreement with that. Jennifer?
Let's go.
I do have a slight disagreement what she said at the later part of that it's a necessary thing for government to do, actually. And I believe there are other avenues that we can take in order to have security, like, the TSA and going through airport security and stuff like that. There are other avenues that we can take in order to screen our airport passengers, or to make the country feel more secure and stuff like that, without having to go to drastic measures such as, doing full body searches, going through the airport, just having random people pulled out of line and doing a full body search on them, or going through all of their baggage and accessories and stuff like that. So I believe that is the most harshest way but it's also the easiest way, and that's why I believe that it's used more frequently, is because it is the easiest way to do a mass controlling of people.
You know, I'm going to throw out my script for a minute here because you've raised another question that's sure to get you guys going, and that's what about this question of profiling? I mean, you said we want to do less searching of baggage, etc. But what about picking out people that look suspicious? Kendra, you want to comment on what we mean by look suspicious?
You're right in my avenue right there. Racial profiling, social profiling, whatever you may call it. So what is your question? Are you asking me?
I guess what I'm asking is, does it give license for a little, the fact that you want stricter security, does that mean that we ought to be allowed to do a little bit of profiling? Does that mean that it's okay that maybe we suspect somebody that looks Middle Eastern, and we don't give the presumption that we should give to everybody that regardless of what you look like or where you look like you come from, you should be treated the same?
Right. I believe that there's suspicion in every type of ethnic background or any type of environment or any type of area maybe. There's always suspicion from everyone. We all have it. We're all guilty of that. So I just put that out there. But I do believe that it is okay to have your suspicions, but the measures that you take in order to satisfy those suspicions, that's what's the question. And I believe when it violates another person's rights per se, and when it crosses some very very important lines, I believe that it can be seen as for a sort of discrimination or profiling, so to say. So I believe that you can have your suspicions, but I do believe that there is a line and there is a boundary to trying to see, is this Middle Eastern person with a turban, are they a threat? You know, we can't necessarily say that, but I believe that we should have to just kind of assume the best in a sense. But if there's something that is raising suspicion or something that we notice a pattern that is not, that is kind of irregular, then yeah, take our precaution. Let's take our, further mechanism. But other than that, no.
What do you think, Jennifer? Is she trying to have it both ways, or are you trying to have it both ways? I mean, this does come down to a very delicate balancing act, doesn't it?
True. Yes, it does. It does. And it seems like Kendra is trying to have it both ways. And I get that, because you try to have the best of everything kind of a deal. But I believe that in certain situations, maybe not really discrimination, but maybe a little bit more screening of people who look to be a certain ethnicity or something like that. Statistically, like we keep bringing up Middle Easterns. Well, it's statistically, Middle Easterns have a higher rate of terror against Americans, actually. And different groups from different regions, I believe, should be screened a little bit more thoroughly, just because of that security. And yes, that does infringe upon their liberties and stuff like that, whether they're an American citizen or not. But I believe that in certain situations such as that, it is a need that needs to happen. But on the other hand, that's also not really the best way to go about it. I mean, that restricts everyone.
I think me and
No, you two are fine. I'm getting in the way here. That you're having a great conversation.
I believe me and Jen have the same stance. I don't think it's a matter of trying to have both, but it's trying to find that balance, because you can't be totally on one side and totally on the other side, because when you do that, in some way you're kind of misunderstanding the other point of view, and in some way you're not truly getting an understanding of the other person. So I believe you have to kind of come to a common ground, and it seems like you're kind of just balancing and you're not really making a sound decision, a concrete answer. But in a sense, you're just trying to take both aspects of two different elements and trying to put them together so that they're not causing any sort of issue or some type of just a type of violation of anyone's right.
Yeah, and I think to some extent, I've noticed that the two of you have switched sides now 4 times by my count.
We're true, yeah.
No, I mean,
we never can make up our minds.
It's difficult because, and what that illustrates is that it is a very close issue. If we can concentrate for a minute on the whole question of freedom of speech and that right, let me point out the standard example that political scientists use and other scholars use to try to slice this issue, and that's Oliver Wendell Holmes' fire in a crowded theater metaphor, which I guess both of you are familiar with. Holmes said that while we want to allow free speech almost unlimited, there had to be some limitations, and the example he said was, should we allow somebody to cry fire, and as a matter of fact, he said falsely cry fire in a crowded theater, knowing that that would lead to panic and whatever, and that might be the place where we say, okay, freedom of speech has to be curtailed there. And so what I think that points to is the idea that all of our rights must be curtailed somewhere, and if it comes to protecting the country, that might be the appropriate place to do it. Go ahead. Who wants to go first on that?
It's really difficult for me to actually, because I'm against what you said, curtailing our rights and our, liberties. Yes, I do understand a need for curtailing in certain situations, but for instance, I was talking to Kendra the other day about Pearl Harbor, actually, and how when Pearl Harbor happened, we put...
You two have been warming up for this.
Yes.
Good, I like that.
So we talked about how Pearl Harbor and how America, under the president, used the power of the government to actually put all of the Japanese Americans and Japanese workers and stuff like that in not really concentration camps, but in camps. They segregated them away, and that was a curtailing of their rights and that's their liberties and stuff like that. And that was done for the security of the nation because they believed that they were deep sleeper agents and a whole list of other reasons that they did that. But that shouldn't have happened.
Well, this is what I think. I understand where you're coming from. I know that the Japanese Americans, and very interesting enough, they even confine even some German Americans and Italian Americans. So, I believe that even though it did violate their rights as a citizen, being that they were Japanese Americans and they're there long enough, and pretty much they had the presidency there, I believe that it was an emergency act that Roosevelt signed that I forgot what it was called, but he had signed the order. Yep. And I believe that it was an emergency order, and I believe that for the security and safety of the country, that's why he did what he did.
But there's the issue in some ways comes down to due process. We have in the Constitution something called habeas corpus, which you're probably familiar with. I think it literally means have the body or something, but it doesn't mean the body at all. It means a person. That a person has to be delivered up before they can be detained, has to be delivered up before a magistrate, a judge, who can decide whether or not there's sufficient reason to be charging this person with a crime. And absent that, the person has to be let go. Now we have these FISA courts, and I'm trying to remember what FISA stands for, but something Security Act, I think is the last part. But the FISA court is a secret court that's able to take requests from the FBI and other national security agencies and allow warrants without any open discussion, allow people to be seized and imprisoned without any open discussion. So part of the question is, how do we know if the reason, we're talking about whether or not it's justified. How do we know if it's justified if we have courts like this that don't even let us have any open process to review whether or not these people are properly charged?
I don't know, and I just learned about this, so what I might say might be a little bit iffy or wrong, but in my opinion, those courts actually, I don't believe are right or are justified. I don't believe if you are accused of something, you have to have evidence against the accused. You have to, be able to prove that this person does that or did this certain act or, whatever. You have to give the person being accused a right to or a place to defend themselves. They should have the right to defend themselves, and that is granted to us. And with this court and this, what was it, the FISA, and that really kind of curtails our rights as citizens and stuff like that. At least if my rights are going to be curtailed, I would at least like to know about it.
Now, Kendra, you said you agreed, but wait a second. We're talking here about terrorists. okay? And we're trying to protect
I knew you were
ourselves from
going to go
terrorists.
there. I was trying to defend myself. I was trying to hurry and jump in
We're
there.
talking about
because
terrorists.
I knew you were going to hit that.
And terrorists are bad people, and they hide things from us. And we've got to spy on them and try to figure out how to catch them. And if we have to go openly and say, oh, by the way, Mr. Terrorist, we're getting a subpoena or a search warrant. We're going to search your property and whatever. Aren't the terrorists going to hide this stuff? And wouldn't we be endlessly unsafe? Isn't that the point of your more security first position?
Well, this is why I believe in security first, but I also believe security under grounds of proof. You know, you cannot just, I believe that it is okay to get a warrant. I mean, I feel like they should know. I believe you need to know what you're being charged for, but I feel like they should have the ability to do that if they see something that is that is abnormal, they see they have been following you, they see inconsistency in your behavior, something that will raise some type of suspicion. I believe, and this is actually a legitimate suspicion, that it is okay. They can say, hey, we want to do this search warrant, we're going to come in your house and we're going to this. I do believe that if they have enough grounds and proofs to show that there is an issue arise, or they see something that is like, I don't know about this, and they want to, carry out procedures to.
But do that without anybody knowing they're getting the search warrant.
Well, I do believe that they should know, but under certain cases, it doesn't always go through. I mean, I feel like they should know. They should know that they're going to get. I feel like they should know, but there may be cases where they might not know.
Okay.
My feelings on this with the acts of terror and stuff like that is definitely, I'm okay with this being a secret court and not having it published if it's not dealing with American citizens and if it's not on American soil. So if we have terrorists in Egypt or Germany or wherever else that is not on American soil and that does not concern American citizens, I believe that we should be able, and that does bring in international security and stuff like that.
What about if an American citizen is making a phone call to one of these people that we know is a terrorist?
And see, that
is the tricky line. It's a very, very slippery slope. But if you're an American and you're being wiretapped, I don't believe that you should be wiretapped. I don't believe that the government can wiretap your phone as an American, because that
Even if they're trying to catch you talking to terrorists.
No, because what they would do is they would catch the terrorists and they would wiretap the terrorists, and then the American calling in, they would have that American voice and stuff like that on call or recorded or something like that, and then they could go and have the American checked out legally.
Oh, but they don't have to tell the American that they...
Okay, I see your system here. It's like you go through the terrorists, but you...
Yes.
Yeah, okay, I see.
You go through the terrorists to get the American.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, to protect us.
So it depends on which end you're starting from.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's pretty much where it is.
Okay, well,
I like that. Isn't that good? Come on.
Let me point out that the organization SPA that I referred to earlier, we're making an attempt with this organization, and it's a great organization, and we've got a lot of student interest, and it's going very well. We attempt in this organization to divide the group into leaning Democrat, leaning Republican. And of the two students I have here, Jennifer is leaning Republican side, and Kendra's the leaning Democrat side. And so I'm interested that it seems that Jennifer is taking the more pro-liberty side, and one would usually associate that with being the left-wing position, left-wingers being the ones more likely to be pushing liberties and whatever. But let me just point out one issue that clearly goes the other way, and in various things that I was reading up on getting ready for this, I noticed that, and that's the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment, this whole gun rights thing, is kind of, in many ways, turning the right wing to be more the ones fighting for liberties and fighting to defend the Constitution, where it's been the other way around. Is that a correct reading, you think?
I don't keep abreast with this issue on gun control and rights and stuff like that, but I do believe that it is more of a Republican trend to take up, metaphorically, to take our arms about taking up arms.
I like that.
Why, thank you. But I do believe that it is more of not really more of a Republican issue because it's an American issue, but I do believe that Republicans are advocating more strongly about it.
You Republicans always like to wrap yourself in the flag. I know that.
I'm in the middle. I just lean a little bit towards the right. So I am very neutral, Dr. Easton.
And by the time I'm through with you, I'll have you solidly in the.
Yeah, solidly a liberal.
Kendra, what do you think? Do you see it? Is it a Democrat-Republican issue, a left-right issue, or maybe it's a generational issue? Is your generation more interested in protecting rights, or are they more willing to, being the post-9/11 generation, are you more willing to surrender your rights in terms of safety?
I believe our generation. I think most of our generation are for the having of rights and the having your freedom of speech and all of these things. Me, on the other hand, I believe that in order to be able to have those protection, have that security, you need to give up something. I do believe that you can't have your cake and eat it too, and I believe that these issues that we're talking about aren't necessarily a left or right thing, but they're a general issue, and I believe that we can't define, because just like, even though I may lean more towards the Democratic side, there are still some views that I have that are solely Republican. So I can't necessarily say, hey, I'm for all this on the Democratic side, because there's some things I do not agree that, on the Democratic side, and there's some things with Jennifer that I do agree on, or I don't agree with her on. So I really think this is the right to bear arms is a general issue, and I believe that in order to really come to a resolve, you really got to take from both sides here, and you really got to. I feel like you really kind of have to you have to have a little bias in your thinking.
Besides, this is Georgia, so gun rights is not an issue at all, right? It's settled, right?
No,
we
sir.
don't even discuss it. Let me turn to some other variations on this, because excuse me, I want to try to get to some of the tentacles that grow out of this. One of the big questions is, what about police faking a situation in order to entrap a possible terrorist, and then charging them with being terrorists when they haven't actually done anything. They were just asked to participate. I was reading this one story about a plot uncovered in Albany where a couple of individuals were baited by the FBI into saying they would cooperate with some scheme to do some terrorist acts, and they never participated in them at all, but they were charged with being terrorists and charged with a crime because of that. And the answer from the police, well, these are potential terrorists. We have to keep an eye on them.
I agree with that. I do believe.
Everything's out the window as far as I can tell. I can't decide who's on which side. I don't even know I'm not even sure which side I'm on.
I told you, politics. There's no solid answer for politics. There really isn't. It's like a mixture of everything. You can't be on one side.
You can't. But I agree with that, because even though they weren't, I see it as not being tricked. They weren't tricked into this situation. They weren't, what's another word for tricked?
Entrapped.
They weren't entrapped. They weren't.
Yeah.
They had a decision. They had their own. Their own decision. They could make their own decision of, am I going to go with this? Am I not going to go with this? And they made that decision. No one tried to influence them one way or the other, and even if they were influenced one way or the other, or bribed or anything like that, it was their decision to do this.
So when somebody says, I'm going to kill that guy. I've had enough of this guy. This guy's been harassing me. He's been bugging me. And we're talking in high school. I'm going to kill this guy. Says outright, I am going to kill this guy. Says that in front of the cop, and the cop comes over and says, "What? You're having this fight with another young man, and you said you're going to kill him. I'm going to kill him." Should he then be charged with a crime?
No. What my understanding of
terrorists?
No, what my understanding of your explanation of this terrorist plot was that they didn't actively participate in terrorists, but were they actually preparing and doing illegal crimes or anything like that?
They hadn't done anything.
They hadn't done anything yet.
They just talked about it.
They talked about it. Did they make plans? Did they have anything in place?
The FBI and they made plans together, I guess.
Okay.
What
so there was.
But you're
plans
right.
in place.
it's a delicate balance, and without knowing the circumstances of the case, I mean, I'm giving you a hypothetical case, which is difficult, but
But with the I'm gonna kill this person, this, that, and the other, it's more of a anger and emotion filled thing. There is no plan. There is no I'm gonna go. There's no house casing, or there's nothing in place for that accusation to go into fruition about. With this case in Albany, there might have been like you said, there was plans in place. Even though they didn't do anything, there was strategic plans in place for that to happen.
Okay,
I have to take the opposite view, though.
Let me cut you off, because I'm looking at the clock and we're running out of time, and this is what we're going to do. But you'll still get to make your
Part
point,
two.
Ken. I try to sum up where we stand and then let people make their last points. I mean, I think what we've accomplished here is an understanding of how complex this issue is, and how delicate it is, and how people are willing to trade some liberties for some amount of safety, but it really comes down to what amount is considered acceptable. And so I think it's going to be an ongoing discussion, and I think the most troubling aspect of this is the fact that with secret courts like the FISA court, we don't know how far we're going in restricting people's liberties, and that's the real question. So I'm going to ask both Jennifer and Kendra to say if you have one last point on this whole thing. We'll do what we call our lightning round and make your last quick points, and then we'll wrap it up for the day.
Do you want to go first to finish on your thought that he interrupted? All right, go ahead.
I disagree. I believe that for the police officers to do that, I believe that to suspect them as terrorists because of that, I believe that they shouldn't charge them, but maybe have some suspicion. Keep an eye out on them.
Okay.
Not to necessarily put a charge on them to label them and to make the whole world to frighten the whole world. Hey, these people right here in a situation with the boy, and he said he wanted to kill this person, but he didn't do it. I would keep an eye out on him. I wouldn't charge him. I would keep an eye out on him, because of course it has to be that balance, which I always stand. I'm not biased. I'm just standing and trying to make a balance, because you cannot necessarily lean to one side or the other. There always has to be, for each side, you kind of have an understanding of both, so that you can make the right conclusion and have a great resolve.
Okay, you get your last point, Jennifer.
I do not believe that rights should be curtailed just for security on the whole. Yes, I do believe that in certain situations, rights are curtailed, and that there is no opposition against it, or no strong opponent or voice for that happening. And yes, I do realize that does happen, but I would rather have my own rights and my own personal liberties and stuff like that, and rather build a security for myself as a person and as my community, rather than have the government be in control of that, because I do not have enough control of the government or whatever to ensure my safety through them, because I am a small part of that bigger organization. I would rather have my freedoms versus having a security by the government, because I can make my own security from it. So that's my last.
I think we're gonna have to wrap it up on that, because we've run out of time. But I want to thank Jennifer and Kendra for their positions, which switched 8 times. I think I lost count, but again, showing us the complexity of this issue. So that pretty much wraps it up for today. We're going to hear now from Taylor Atkins, who's going to tell us about next week's show. So thank you and good afternoon.
Yep. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Once again, you had a great debate. Be sure to tune in next week for another episode of Burning Issues.